The Arizona Coyotes have inked pending RFA forward Clayton Keller to an 8-year contract extension. Plus, the Vancouver Canucks have also come to terms with RFA forward Nikolay Goldobin, and apparently the Montreal Canadiens might be interested in veteran forward Jason Pominville. We'll get into all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned off the top here, the big news of the day is the Arizona Coyotes have signed pending restricted free agent forward Clayton Keller to an 8-year contract extension with an average annual value of $7.15 million. This is a mega contract for the player entering his third and final year of his entry-level deal. Of course, Clayton Keller burst onto the scene with a 60-plus point season as a rookie, had a phenomenal rookie season. However, Keller did face a little bit of a sophomore slump last year, dipping down to 47 points. While the team improved, Clayton Keller's play overall did not. Now, of course, with the big acquisition of Phil Kessel, we might see Keller's numbers take another bump forward this year. Hopefully, he can bounce back, play closer to what he did in his rookie year. Of course, having a player of Kessel's magnitude on his line certainly should help the point production as well. So this is a really good deal for Clayton Keller. Obviously, right now we're waiting on a lot of RFA signings, and this is not one that we expected to come as soon as today. Obviously, for Keller, it's a long-term security. He very well might end up leaving money on the table if his career trajectory keeps going at a high rate. But if he ends up being more like the 60-point player that he's been so far, then it's going to be a great contract for him. Of course, there is some risk involved here for the team, but it seems to be a trend that John Chayka and the Arizona Coyotes seem to be very fond of. They really seem to be liking locking up their young players to long-term deals before they complete their entry-level deals. Now, we've seen this happen before. He had signed Nick Schmaltz to a long-term contract not long after acquiring him from the Blackhawks. We've seen him do this with defenseman Jacob Chychrun. We've seen him do this with forward Christian Dvorak. Of course, they also inked their captain Oliver Ekman-Larsson to a long-term contract as well, but he was a little bit more established, but still giving him a lot of term at over $8 million. The team of the Coyotes are now up against the salary cap, even though they haven't been a playoff team for the last number of years. So I do feel like there is some risk involved with this contract. It very well could pay off, and it might be a great deal longer term. I mean, Clayton Keller has looked like a really high-end player so far in his young career, and if he continues to improve and putting up some big point totals, then this very well might be a bargain contract by the time we get about halfway through it. It's really difficult to say, but with Chayka being fond of signing these players as they're so young and not really overly established yet, I guess there is definitely like a bit of a high-risk, high-reward type of contract here, at least in my opinion. I mean, especially after having a sophomore slump after regressing last year, to reward him with an 8-year contract extension does seem a little bit like odd timing on my part. If I were the GM, I probably would have let him start the season on the final year of his entry-level deal first, see how things go, and if things were looking like he was going to be the player he was in year one or possibly even better, then I would have started negotiations to try to get ahead of the RFA status that he would have been heading into next summer. Of course, with the logjam of RFAs this year, I'm sure it's something that he wanted to avoid, and he even said earlier this offseason in an interview that it's something they were getting ahead of with some of these other younger players that I just mentioned who have already signed long-term deals. Some of those guys would have been RFAs this summer as well, and he really wanted to make sure that they were not involved in that big logjam that many of these guys find themselves in here today. So, of course, I'd love to know your thoughts on this Clayton Keller contract extension with the Coyotes. It's a big deal. It's a long-term deal. It's a lot of risk here, but it very well could prove to be a very valuable, great contract longer term. Hopefully Clayton Keller turns out to be the player that he looked to be in year one as a rookie with the Coyotes and really proves to be, a fixture for their franchise for many years to come. Now, one other quick note here as well. The Florida Panthers have signed veteran forward Troy Brouwer to a professional tryout contract. Of course, Brouwer played last year with the Panthers. I believe he played 75 games, put up around 20 points. So he has been invited back on a professional tryout to see if he can crack that team again. I do think it's probably doubtful, but I guess we will see. I was a little bit surprised they signed him last year, given the fact with the other changes they've made, the newer guys they've signed through unrestricted free agency, and some of their other younger players vying for spots. I would be quite surprised if Brouwer caught on again with the Panthers, but I guess you just never know. So he is going to camp with them to see what happens on that front. And the Vancouver Canucks have signed restricted free agent forward Nikolay Goldobin to a 1-year, one-way contract at $900K. So obviously that gets Goldobin under contract, gets him into training camp, see how he can do, see if he can be a regular member of their forward group, which I know many are hoping for. Goldobin can be a pretty offensive type of player, so if he gets a chance to play with some of these other younger players on the Canucks that have a lot of offensive talents, then maybe we can see a bit of a breakthrough season for him. Of course, that leaves Brock Boeser, the only unsigned Vancouver player now on their roster, so pending RFA, Brock Boeser is in that boat, like we mentioned, with many of the other RFAs, and it's really difficult to say when that's going to happen, when a contract's going to be put in place here for the young forward, but that's their only deal left to work on as they head into training camp here in a couple of weeks' time. Now, of course, like I said, the other thing I want to talk about today as well is the Montreal Canadiens are apparently interested in veteran forward Jason Pominville. Now, of course, Pominville is originally from Quebec. I know many feel that he likely only would have played with Buffalo. It very well might end up being the case. It's really difficult to say, but there has been some talk from Eric Engels that the Habs are interested. At least there's no guarantee. Didn't say anything was imminent, but the 36-year-old forward, apparently camp has been having some talks with Montreal, and they are considering bringing in the veteran forward there. Of course, Montreal has a lot of young players now within their forward group. They don't have as much grit as they used to as well after trading Andrew Shaw. Maybe bringing in a guy like Pominville on a short-term contract, like a one-year veteran deal, might be the type of move that really helps their bottom six. Maybe Pominville is still good enough as well to maybe chip in with 12, 15 goals as well. So certainly could be a possibility, might be a decent move by Montreal, but I guess it will remain to be seen if Jason Pominville does end up getting a contract from them or elsewhere. He has made it clear, though, that he does want to play this year. So at the very least, I could see him going to camp with somebody on a professional tryout if he doesn't have a firm contract in place by the time training camps open here in a couple of weeks' time. So, of course, if you're a Montreal fan, I'd love to hear from you down in the comments section. How would you feel about the Montreal Canadiens bringing in Jason Pominville on a short-term veteran contract to add that extra grit to the bottom six of the lineup? So that is all your latest news for today. Of course, as always, like I said, leave your comments down below and we can continue the conversation regarding today's news. If you're new to the channel as well, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.